On her wedding night, Adriana Vale made a choice that should have gotten her killed. Sold to Matteo De Luca, the most feared man in the city, she did the unthinkable. She ran. He caught her, pinned her against cold marble, had every reason to break her, but he didn't. And in that single moment of restraint, something far more dangerous than violence took root between them. This isn't a love story. This is a war story. A story of two people who became each other's greatest weapon and greatest weakness. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches. The wedding dress cost more than Adriana Vale's entire life. White silk, hand-stitched lace, a train that whispered across marble floors like a ghost trailing behind her. It fit perfectly, which somehow made it worse. Someone had measured her without asking. Someone had chosen this for her. Someone had decided that tonight she would become property. The cathedral had been full of flowers and empty of warmth. Hundreds of guests, politicians, judges, men in expensive suits with dead eyes, had watched her walk down that endless aisle toward a man she'd met exactly once. Matteo De Luca, 32 years old, 6 feet of controlled violence wrapped in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her father's debts. Those debts. That's what this was really about. Her father, Marcus Vale, had been a small-time art dealer who'd made the catastrophic mistake of borrowing money from people who didn't accept payment plans. People who owned judges and police chiefs and entire city blocks. People like the De Luca family. When Marcus couldn't pay, they'd come to collect. Not cash. A daughter. Adriana had learned about her fate 3 weeks ago, sitting in their cramped apartment above the failing gallery, while 2 men in dark suits explained the arrangement to her father. She'd listened from the hallway, her hand pressed against her mouth to keep from screaming. "Your debt is forgiven," one of them had said. "In exchange for your daughter's hand in marriage to Matteo De Luca, she will be provided for, protected. This is generous, Mr. Vale. Don't make the mistake of refusing." Her father had cried. Then he'd agreed, and Adriana had understood with brutal clarity that she had never mattered to him as much as his own survival. The wedding ceremony had been a blur. Matteo's voice, low and precise, reciting vows that meant nothing. Her own voice, surprisingly steady, doing the same. The ring, heavy platinum, embedded with diamonds, sliding onto her finger like a shackle. The kiss, brief and cold, his mouth brushing hers with all the warmth of a business transaction. Because that's what this was. She was inventory, an asset transferred from one ledger to another. Now, standing in the penthouse honeymoon suite of the De Luca Tower, Adriana stared at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below her, glittering and indifferent. Behind her, she could hear Matteo moving through the suite, the soft clink of crystal as he poured himself a drink. They hadn't spoken since leaving the reception. The suite was obscene in its luxury. Cream marble floors, art that probably belonged in museums, furniture that looked like it had never been sat on, a bedroom visible through an open doorway, dominated by a bed the size of her entire childhood room. Her stomach twisted. "You should eat something." Matteo's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. She turned to find him standing near the bar, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He held a glass of amber liquid, whiskey, probably, and studied her with dark eyes that gave nothing away. "I'm not hungry," she said. "You didn't eat at the reception." I wasn't exactly in the mood to celebrate. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. Or annoyance. With Matteo De Luca, it was impossible to tell. "Sit down, Adriana." "I'd rather stand." His jaw tightened. That wasn't a request. "And I'm not a dog." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. She'd spent 3 weeks swallowing her rage, playing the compliant bride for her father's sake, for survival's sake. But they were alone now. No witnesses, no cameras. Just her and the man who'd bought her like livestock. Matteo set down his glass with deliberate care. When he moved toward her, every step was controlled, predatory. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to intimidate, far enough to give her the illusion of space. "Let me make something very clear," he said, his voice dropping to a register that made her pulse spike. "You are my wife now. That means you live under my protection and my rules. You eat when I tell you to eat, You sleep when I tell you to sleep. You don't leave this building without my permission, and you certainly don't speak to me like that in my own home." Adriana lifted her chin, meeting his gaze even though every survival instinct screamed at her to look away. "Or what? You'll hit me? Kill me? Go ahead, at least then I won't have to pretend this is anything other than what it is. A prison sentence." For a long moment, Mateo said nothing. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, deliberately, he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You think I need to hurt you to break you?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't. All I have to do is wait. You'll learn. They all do. I'm not like whoever they are." "No?" His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on her mouth. "Then what are you, Adriana? Brave? Stupid? Or just naive enough to think defiance will get you anywhere except hurt?" Before she could answer, he stepped back, retrieving his glass. "There's food in the kitchen. Eat or don't. I don't particularly care." He moved toward the bedroom. "I have calls to make. Don't wait up." The door closed behind him with a soft click. Adriana stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to shatter every pristine surface in this gilded cage. Instead, she walked to the windows and pressed her forehead against the cold glass. 73 stories down, the city pulsed with life. Cars crawled along streets like blood through veins. People moved through their lives, free in ways she would never be again. No. The thought crystallized with sudden, fierce clarity. No, she wouldn't accept this. Wouldn't become whatever broken thing Mateo expected her to be. She'd find a way out. She had to. Her eyes tracked the layout of the penthouse, cataloging exits. The main elevator required a key card. The emergency stairs would have alarms. But there had to be something, some vulnerability in this fortress. She had all night to find it. 2 hours later, Adriana had changed out of the wedding dress and into jeans and a sweater she'd found in the walk-in closet. Someone had already moved her meager belongings here, apparently. She'd explored every room, tested every window, examined every door. The penthouse was a masterpiece of security, cameras in every hallway, biometric locks, windows that didn't open. The main elevator required both a key card and a fingerprint scan, but the service elevator was different. She'd found it tucked behind a panel in the kitchen, probably used for deliveries and maintenance. It required only a key card, which she'd discovered in a drawer near the bar, likely kept there for staff access. Her hands trembled as she swiped it. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped inside, her heart in her throat, and pressed the button for the parking garage. If she could just get to street level, disappear into the city before Mateo realized she was gone. The doors had almost closed when a hand shot through the gap, forcing them open. Mateo stood in the corridor, still in his dress shirt and slacks, his expression utterly calm. Behind him, she could see one of the security cameras, its red light blinking steadily. "Going somewhere?" he asked. Adriana's stomach plummeted. Oh. "Step out of the elevator, Adriana." "No." His eyebrows rose. "No? You can't keep me here. This is kidnapping, false imprisonment. I didn't choose this. Your father chose it for you. And you said yes at the altar. Legally, you're exactly where you're supposed to be." He extended his hand. "Now step out before I drag you out. I'll scream. Go ahead. We own this building. Who exactly do you think will help you?" The truth of it hit her like a fist. She was in a tower owned by the DeLuca family, surrounded by their employees, their security, their people. Even if she made it to the street, where would she go? Her father had sold her. She had no money, no friends powerful enough to protect her from the reach of this family. She was alone. But she'd be damned if she'd make it easy for him. Adriana lunged for the close button, but Mateo was faster. He stepped into the elevator, his body blocking her escape, and hit the emergency stop. The elevator jerked to a halt between floors. They stood in the small space, the emergency lighting casting harsh shadows across his face. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said quietly. "Good. I hope I make it impossible." "Why?" He moved closer, crowding her against the back wall. "What do you think is going to happen here, Adriana? You think I'm going to hurt you, force myself on you? Isn't that what men like you do?" Something dark flashed in his eyes. "Men like me? Criminals, mobsters, whatever you want to call it. You take what you want. You don't care who you destroy." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then slowly, he raised his hand. Adriana flinched, her body going rigid, her breath catching. Mateo's hand stopped inches from her face. He held it there, watching her reaction. Then deliberately, carefully, he reached past her and pressed his palm against the wall beside her head. "I'm not going to hit you," he said, his voice low and rough. "I'm not going to rape you. And I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't choose to do. But understand this. You are my wife now. That means you are mine to protect and mine to command. If you run, I will find you. If you fight me, you will lose. And if you test me again like this..." He leaned in until his mouth was beside her ear. "I will make sure you understand exactly what kind of man I am." He pushed away from the wall and hit the button to restart the elevator. It lurched upward, climbing back toward the penthouse. Adriana's legs felt weak. Her whole body trembled with adrenaline and rage and something else she couldn't name. When the doors opened, Mateo stepped out first, then turned to face her. "Come," he said. It wasn't a request. She followed him back into the penthouse, hating herself for it, hating him more. He led her to the bedroom, the massive bed with its silk sheets and too many pillows, and gestured to it. "Sleep. You look exhausted." "Where will you—" "I have business to attend to. I'll be in my office." He paused in the doorway, his hand on the frame. "The cameras are everywhere, Adriana. The security team reports directly to me. If you try to leave again, I'll know before you reach the elevator. Are we clear?" She didn't answer. "Are we clear?" he repeated, his tone sharpening. "Yes," she bit out. "Good. Sleep well, wife." The door closed. Adriana sank onto the edge of the bed, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion that had been clawing at her all day. But sleep felt impossible. Her mind raced, replaying every moment, every word. "I'm not going to hit you. I'm not going to rape you." She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt confused. Men like Matteo De Luca didn't show restraint. They took. They conquered. They broke. So why hadn't he? She thought about the way he'd stopped, his hand inches from her face, the way he'd watched her flinch, the flicker of something in his eyes. Anger, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like regret? No. She was reading too much into it, projecting humanity onto a monster. Adriana pulled off her shoes and lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. The bed was absurdly comfortable. Everything in this place was beautiful and expensive and wrong. She didn't remember falling asleep, but when she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and someone was knocking softly on the door. "Mrs. De Luca, I've brought breakfast." Adriana sat up, disoriented. Mrs. De Luca. The name felt like a brand. "Come in," she called, her voice rough. The door opened and a woman in her 50s entered, carrying a tray laden with food. She had kind eyes and a careful smile. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Rosa. I manage the household staff. Mr. De Luca asked me to make sure you ate." She set the tray on the bedside table. "There's fruit, pastries, eggs, coffee. If you'd like something else, this is fine. Thank you." Rosa nodded, but she didn't leave. She hesitated, her hands clasped in front of her. "May I speak plainly, Mrs. De Luca?" Adriana blinked. "Of course. I've worked for the De Luca family for 20 years. I've seen a lot of things, a lot of difficult situations." Rosa's expression softened. "I know this marriage wasn't your choice. I know you're frightened, but I want you to know Mr. Matteo is not his father. He's not cruel for the sake of cruelty. If you give him a chance—" "A chance?" Adriana's laugh was bitter. "He bought me, Rosa, like I'm a painting or a car. What kind of chance is that?" Rosa's eyes filled with something that looked like pity. "I understand. I do. But you're here now, and fighting him will only make things harder for you. He's stubborn. Once he's made a decision, he doesn't change his mind, but he's also fair. If you show him respect, he'll show you the same." "Respect," Adriana echoed. "That's what you call this?" "I call it survival, ma'am." Rosa moved toward the door. "Eat. You'll need your strength." When she was gone, Adriana stared at the tray of food. Her stomach growled, betraying her. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and her body didn't care about pride. She picked up a croissant and bit into it. It was perfect, buttery, flaky, still warm. She hated that it tasted good. The rest of the day passed in a strange, suspended state. Matteo was absent. According to Rosa, he'd left early for business. Adriana was free to roam the penthouse, which felt less like freedom and more like being a pet allowed to wander its cage. She found a library filled with first editions, a gym with equipment that looked brand new, a balcony that offered a stunning view but was enclosed by glass too thick to break. Everywhere she went, she felt the weight of surveillance. The cameras, the security team somewhere below, watching her every move. By evening, she was climbing the walls. When Matteo finally returned, it was nearly midnight. Adriana was curled up in the library pretending to read when she heard the penthouse door open. She listened to his footsteps crossing the marble, the sound of his jacket being draped over a chair, the clink of a glass. Then his voice, closer than she'd expected. "You're still awake." She looked up to find him standing in the library doorway, loosening his tie. He looked tired, lines of tension around his eyes, his jaw tight. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Neither could I." He moved to the bar cart in the corner and poured 2 glasses of wine, then crossed to where she sat and held one out. "Here." She took it warily. "Are you trying to get me drunk?" "I'm trying to have a civil conversation with my wife." "Is that so hard to believe? Given that you threatened me last night?" "Yes." Matteo's mouth twitched. "I didn't threaten you. I explained the situation. With your hand against the wall beside my head and your mouth at my ear. Very explanatory." He sat down in the chair across from her, stretching out his long legs. "You tried to run. What did you expect me to do? Pat you on the head and send you on your way? I expected you to act like the criminal you are. And yet here you sit, unharmed, unmolested, drinking wine in a library that costs more than most people make in a year." He took a sip, his gaze never leaving hers. "Tell me, Adriana, what exactly do you think I am?" She met his eyes. "A man who buys people. A man who honored a debt your father owed. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting." "No?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Let me tell you what would have happened if I hadn't agreed to this marriage. Your father would have been found in an alley with 2 bullets in his head. You would have been taken anyway, probably sold to someone far worse than me. Someone who wouldn't care about your comfort or your consent. Someone who would have broken you in ways you can't even imagine." His voice dropped. "I saved you from that. You're welcome." Adriana's hand tightened on her glass. "You didn't save me. You just claimed me first. Semantics. It's my life." "It was your father's choice. He had no right. He had every right. You were his responsibility. He gambled with money he didn't have, and when the bill came due, he paid it the only way he could." Matteo set down his glass. "I know you hate him for it, but hate me if it makes you feel better. Just understand that this is reality now. You are my wife. This is your home. And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for both of us." "Never," Adriana whispered. "I'll never accept this." Matteo studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood, finishing his wine in one swallow. "We'll see," he said quietly. He left her there, alone in the library with her rage and her fear and the terrible growing suspicion that he might be right. The pattern established itself over the next week. Matteo left early, returned late. When he was home, he was polite but distant, treating her more like a roommate than a wife. He didn't touch her, didn't push, didn't demand anything beyond her presence at dinner when he was home, which somehow made it worse, because Adriana had prepared for violence, for cruelty, for the kind of horror stories she'd heard whispered about men like Matteo De Luca. She hadn't prepared for civility. On the 8th day of her marriage, everything changed. Matteo came home early, just after 6, and found her on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of amber and blood. "Get dressed," he said without preamble. "Something formal. We're going out." Adriana turned to face him. "Where?" "Dinner, with people I need you to meet." "What if I refuse?" His expression hardened. "Then I'll dress you myself, your choice." She'd learned enough about Matteo De Luca in the past week to know he didn't make empty threats. 40 minutes later, she descended the staircase in a black dress that clung to every curve, another item that had appeared in the closet without her asking, and heels that made her legs look impossibly long. She'd left her hair down, dark waves cascading over her shoulders, and applied just enough makeup to look polished. When Matteo saw her, something flickered across his face. Appreciation. Possession. Maybe both. You look beautiful, he said simply. She didn't thank him. They rode the elevator down in silence, emerged into the parking garage where a black SUV waited. Matteo opened the door for her, a gesture that felt more about control than courtesy. As they pulled into traffic, Adriana finally asked, "Who are these people we're meeting?" "Business associates. People who need to see that I'm stable, settled, married to someone who makes me look respectable." "So I'm a prop. You're my wife, which in my world means the same thing." He glanced at her. "All you have to do is smile, be charming. Don't contradict me. Can you manage that?" "I suppose I'll have to." "Good girl." The words made her skin prickle, though she couldn't say if it was from anger or something else entirely. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters who moved like ghosts. They were shown to a private room where 3 men and 2 women already waited. Matteo made introductions, his hand at the small of Adriana's back, a touch that felt like a brand. There was Vincent Caruso, heavy-set and jovial, who owned half the construction contracts in the city. His wife Maria, dripping in diamonds. There was Frank Russo, lean and cold-eyed, who ran the docks. His much younger girlfriend, Tasha, who couldn't have been more than 25. And finally, Marco Vitale, silver-haired and sharp, who controlled the unions. "So this is the bride we've heard so much about," Vincent said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Matteo, you didn't tell us she was so beautiful." "I wanted it to be a surprise," Matteo replied smoothly, pulling out Adriana's chair. As dinner progressed, Adriana played her part. She smiled, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, let Matteo rest his hand on her thigh under the table, a gesture of possession that made the other men nod approvingly. She felt like she was dying inside. But she noticed things too. The way Frank Russo's eyes lingered on her too long. The way Marco Vitale watched Matteo with barely concealed calculation. The undercurrents of tension beneath the polite conversation. These weren't friends. They were predators, circling each other, looking for weakness. "Marriage suits you, Matteo," Marco said, raising his glass. "You seem softer." Matteo's hand tightened fractionally on Adriana's thigh. "Happiness does that to a man." "Happiness," Frank echoed, his thin mouth curving. "Is that what we're calling it?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Matteo's smile didn't waver, but Adriana felt the shift in him, the coiling tension, the predator waking up. "Careful, Frank," he said softly. "My wife is sitting right here. I'd hate for her to think you were disrespecting our marriage." Frank held his gaze for a beat too long, then looked away. "Of course. My apologies." But the damage was done. The rest of dinner was strained, the conversation forced. When they finally left, Adriana's whole body ached from the tension. In the SUV, Matteo was silent for several blocks. Then, abruptly, he spoke. "You did well." Adriana stared out the window. "I felt like a trained seal." "Welcome to my world." "Your world is ugly." "Yes," he agreed quietly. "It is." She turned to look at him, surprised by the admission. In the passing streetlights, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. "Why do you do it then?" she asked. "If you know it's ugly." "Because it's what I was born to. My father built this empire, my grandfather before him. I didn't choose this life, Adriana. It chose me." He met her eyes. "Just like it chose you." "That's not the same thing, isn't it? You think I had a choice? I was 10 years old when I watched my father beat a man to death in our kitchen. 12 when I learned to shoot. 15 when I made my first kill. Where exactly in that timeline was I supposed to choose a different path?" The words hung between them, brutal and honest. "I'm not asking for your pity," Matteo continued. "I'm explaining reality. This is what we are now, you and I. 2 people trapped in roles we didn't audition for. We can fight it, or we can survive it. Your choice." Adriana looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time saw past the monster to the man underneath. The man who'd been shaped by violence since childhood. The man who'd learned to survive by becoming harder, colder, more ruthless than anyone else. The man who'd caught her trying to run and hadn't broken her fingers for it. "I don't want to survive," she said quietly. "I want to live." "In my world, they're the same thing." "Then your world is a cage." "Yes," Matteo said, his voice soft and final. "But it's our cage now." We either learn to live in it together, or we destroy each other trying to escape. He looked away, out into the city night, and Adriana realized with a strange, sinking feeling that maybe, just maybe, he was as trapped as she was, just in a different way. The SUV pulled into the garage. They rode the elevator up in silence, and when they reached the penthouse, Matteo went straight to his office without another word. Adriana stood in the vast living room surrounded by luxury and isolation and wondered if this was what the rest of her life would look like. Beautiful, empty, and utterly, completely alone. The loneliness didn't get easier. It calcified, becoming part of the architecture of Adriana's new life. She learned the rhythms of the penthouse. When Rosa arrived with breakfast, when the security shifts changed, when Matteo's car pulled into the garage late at night. She learned to fill the hours with books from the library, workouts in the gym, long baths that did nothing to wash away the feeling of being owned. 3 weeks into the marriage, she'd stopped trying to find exits. Not because she'd accepted her fate, but because she'd realized escape required more than just physical freedom. She needed money, resources, a plan that wouldn't end with her father dead and herself dragged back to this tower. So she waited, watched, learned, and noticed things about Matteo that didn't fit the monster she wanted him to be. The way he never raised his voice to the staff, even when something went wrong. The way he read every night before bed, classic literature, history, philosophy. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. Something raw and almost vulnerable in his expression before he shuttered it away. It would have been easier if he'd been cruel. On a Tuesday morning, Adriana was drinking coffee on the balcony when Matteo emerged from his bedroom earlier than usual. He was already dressed in a charcoal suit, his hair still damp from the shower. "I need you to come somewhere with me today," he said without preamble. She looked up from her book. "Where?" "Family business. My uncle wants to meet you officially." "The one who runs the—" She stopped, not sure what word to use. "The operations." "Yes. Dante De Luca." Matteo's jaw tightened slightly. "He's traditional, old school. I need you to make a good impression." "Or what?" "Or he'll see you as a weakness. And in this family, weaknesses get exploited." He moved closer, his shadow falling across her. "I know you hate this. I know you think I'm a monster, but for the next few hours I need you to pretend you don't. Can you do that?" Adriana set down her coffee. "What's in it for me?" Matteo's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? You want something from me, a performance. What do I get in return?" For a moment he just stared at her, then slowly his mouth curved into something that might have been respect. "What do you want?" "Freedom? Not to leave, I know that's not on the table yet, but freedom to go outside this building, with security fine, but I want to walk in the park, visit a museum, breathe air that doesn't taste like captivity." Matteo considered this, his dark eyes searching her face. 1 hour, once a week, with 2 guards, and you don't try to run. 2 hours. 90 minutes. "Deal." He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Adriana shook it. His palm was warm, calloused, his grip firm, but not crushing. "Get dressed," he said, releasing her. "Something that says respectable wife, not prisoner in designer clothes. Is there a difference?" "Today there is." An hour later, they were in the back of the SUV, heading toward the industrial district. Adriana wore a cream silk blouse and tailored navy pants, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Matteo sat beside her, reviewing something on his phone, his expression carved from stone. "Tell me about your uncle," she said, breaking the silence. "Dante is my father's younger brother. When my father died 3 years ago, there was a question of succession. I was supposed to take over, but Dante thought I was too young, too soft. He wanted the position for himself." "What happened?" "I proved him wrong." Matteo's voice was flat, empty of emotion. "I took out 3 of his allies in one night, made it clear that anyone who sided with him over me would end up the same way. He fell in line after that." Adriana's stomach turned. "You killed 3 people over a job title." "I killed 3 traitors over the future of this family." He finally looked at her. "Don't confuse what we do with ordinary business, Adriana. In my world, leadership is taken, not given. Dante understands that now, but he's never forgiven me for it, which is why today matters." The SUV pulled up to a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside, but when they entered through a side door, Adriana saw it was anything but. Inside, the space had been converted into what looked like a command center. Computers, monitors showing security feeds, men in suits speaking in low voices. This was the heart of the DeLuca empire. Dante DeLuca waited for them in a private office at the back. He was in his 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. When he saw Adriana, his gaze traveled over her with the same assessment one might give livestock. "So, this is the girl," he said in Italian. "In English, uncle," Matteo replied coolly. "My wife speaks only English." Dante's mouth thinned. "Of course. Welcome to the family, Mrs. DeLuca." "Thank you," Adriana said, forcing a smile. "Sit, both of you." Dante gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "We have business to discuss." What followed was an hour of conversation that Adriana barely understood, coded references to shipments and territories, names of people, and places that meant nothing to her. But she understood the undercurrents, the way Dante questioned every one of Matteo's decisions, the way Matteo remained calm, deflecting each challenge with cold precision. They were still at war, uncle and nephew, just fighting with words instead of bullets. Finally, Dante leaned back in his chair, his gaze settling on Adriana. "Tell me, Mrs. DeLuca, what do you think of your husband's leadership?" The room went silent. Matteo's hand tightened on the armrest beside her. Adriana understood the trap immediately. If she praised Matteo, Dante would see her as a puppet. If she criticized him, Dante would use it as ammunition. She met the older man's eyes and smiled. "I think my husband is exactly what this family needs. Someone strong enough to make hard decisions, but smart enough to know when to show mercy. Your brother chose well when he named Matteo his successor." Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. "Mercy," he repeated. An interesting word choice. "Strength without mercy is just brutality," Adriana said, her voice steady. "And brutality creates enemies. I may not understand all the details of your business, but I understand human nature. People follow leaders they respect, not leaders they only fear." For a long moment, Dante said nothing. Then he laughed, a short, sharp bark. "She's got a spine, Matteo. I'll give you that." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Take care of this one. Smart wives are rare in our world." Outside in the SUV again, Matteo was silent until they'd cleared the industrial district. "That was well done," he said finally. "I meant what I said." He turned to look at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Did you? About mercy creating loyalty instead of just fear?" "Yes." She held his gaze. "You haven't hurt me, Matteo. You could have, multiple times. You've chosen not to. That's mercy. And it's the only reason I'm still trying to make this work instead of finding a way to kill you in your sleep." His laugh was unexpected, genuine. "Honesty, that's refreshing. Would you prefer I lie?" "No." His smile faded. "No, I wouldn't." The SUV pulled up to the tower, but instead of going inside, Matteo told the driver to wait. "Come on," he said to Adriana. "Where?" "You wanted freedom. 90 minutes. I'm a man of my word." He led her 2 blocks to a small park she hadn't known existed, wedged between buildings like a secret. Trees provided shade, a fountain burbled at the center, and people sat on benches reading or eating lunch. Normal people. Living normal lives. Adriana felt something crack open in her chest. 90 minutes, Matteo said, nodding to the 2 guards who'd materialized behind them. "They'll keep their distance, but if you run, I won't." He studied her face, then nodded. "I'll be working. Call when you're ready." He handed her a phone, not hers, she noticed, but one of his, and walked away. Adriana stood frozen for a moment, hardly believing it. Then she started walking. Just walking, breathing in the scent of grass and flowers, listening to the ordinary sounds of the city. She bought a coffee from a vendor, sat on a bench and watched pigeons fight over breadcrumbs, let the sun warm her face. For 90 minutes, she wasn't a prisoner. She was just a woman in a park. When her phone buzzed with a text from Matteo, "Time's up," she felt the loss of it like a physical ache, but she kept her word. She walked back to the SUV, climbed inside, and let herself be driven back to her cage. Matteo was waiting in the penthouse, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, working at the dining room table. "Thank you?" Adriana said quietly. He looked up, surprised. For what? For keeping your promise. Something softened in his expression. I always keep my promises, Adriana, even the ones that cost me. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. Matteo kept giving her small freedoms: the park visits, permission to order books, access to a laptop with monitored internet. And in return, Adriana stopped fighting him at every turn. She joined him for dinner without protest, made conversation, tried to understand the world he lived in. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't even acceptance, but it was a truce. Until the night everything shattered. It started with a phone call. Matteo had been working late in his office when his phone rang. Adriana was in the library, but she heard his voice change, heard the ice crack, and something dangerous emerge. When? He said. How many? A pause. I'm on my way. He appeared in the library doorway seconds later, already pulling on his jacket. I have to go. Don't wait up. What's wrong? Someone hit one of our warehouses, 3 men dead. His jaw was granite. I need to handle this. Matteo, lock the bedroom door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Rosa. Understand? The look in his eyes made her throat tight. This wasn't the man who'd walked her to the park. This was the monster the city feared. Be careful, she heard herself say. He paused, something flickering across his face. Then he was gone. Adriana tried to sleep but couldn't. She lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what handling it meant. What he was doing right now. Whether he was the one pulling the trigger or giving the orders. When she finally drifted off around 3, she was jolted awake by the sound of the penthouse door slamming open. Voices, shouting, the sharp crack of something breaking. Adriana's heart hammered. She grabbed her phone, ready to call for help, when the bedroom door burst open. Matteo stood there, his white shirt splattered with blood, his knuckles torn, his eyes wild. Pack a bag, he said. Now! What? They know where we live. We're not safe here. He moved to the closet, grabbing a duffel bag and throwing clothes into it. 5 minutes, Adriana. Only what you need. Who knows? What happened? The people who hit our warehouse weren't thieves. They were sending a message. He turned to face her, blood on his collar, his jaw tight. And the message was for me. They're coming for everything I have, which means they're coming for you. Fear spiked through her. Why me? Because you're my weakness now. Because hurting you hurts me. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip just shy of painful. I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better. But we're out of time, so pack, now. She moved on autopilot, throwing items into a bag, clothes, toiletries. Her hands were shaking. Matteo made calls while she packed, his voice clipped and controlled. Get the safe house ready. I want 6 men on the perimeter. And find out who ordered the hit. I don't care what it takes. 5 minutes later, they were in the back of an armored SUV, speeding through the dark streets. Adriana could see at least 3 other vehicles flanking them. Security, she realized. An entire convoy. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere they won't find you. Matteo's hand found hers in the darkness, his grip tight. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. For what? For dragging you into this, for making you a target, for... He stopped, his jaw working. You were right. This world is a cage, and I've trapped you in it with me. Adriana looked at their joined hands. His was covered in someone else's blood. Hers was trembling. Tell me the truth, she said quietly. How bad is this? Matteo met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw fear. Bad enough that I might not be able to protect you, and that terrifies me more than anything else in this world. The safe house turned out to be a fortress disguised as a suburban home, reinforced walls, bulletproof windows, enough weapons to start a small war. Matteo's men swept the perimeter while he led Adriana inside. The living room looked normal enough, comfortable furniture, a TV, kitchen through an archway. But she could see the cameras, the reinforced doors, the panic room hidden behind a bookshelf. You'll be safe here, Matteo said. I have to go back. Handle this. No. The word came out before she could stop it. He turned, surprised. Adriana, if I'm the target, you can't leave me here with strangers. What if someone gets through? What if... She stopped, trying to understand the panic clawing up her throat. Just don't go. Not yet. Matteo crossed to her in 2 strides, his hands cupping her face. Look at me. Nothing is going to happen to you. I have 12 men guarding this house. The best security system money can buy. And if anyone tries to touch you, I don't care about the security. I care that you're going out there to do something that might get you killed. Her voice cracked. And I don't understand why that matters to me, but it does. Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to something deeper, more vulnerable. I've spent my whole life being something people fear, he said quietly. No one's ever been afraid for me before. Well, I am. Because if you die, I'm alone again, and I've had enough of being alone. Matteo's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I'm not going to die, Adriana. I'm too stubborn. And I have too much to come back to now. He kissed her then. Not the cold, performative kiss from their wedding, but something real and desperate and achingly human. His mouth moved against hers like he was memorizing the feel of it, his hands gentle despite the violence still coating his skin. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with something that looked like wonder. I have to go, he said. But I'll come back. I swear it. You better. Because if you die on me, I'll find a way to kill you again myself. His laugh was soft, almost broken. That's my girl. He left her there, surrounded by armed men and reinforced walls, and Adriana realized with startling clarity that something fundamental had shifted between them. She wasn't just his prisoner anymore, and he wasn't just her captor. They'd become something more complicated, something that felt dangerously close to real. The hours crawled by. Adriana tried to sleep but couldn't. She paced the safe house, jumping at every sound, her mind conjuring terrible scenarios. Matteo bleeding out in some warehouse. Matteo captured. Matteo dead. Around dawn, one of the guards came to find her. Mrs. DeLuca, Mr. DeLuca is on the phone for you. She grabbed it, her heart in her throat. Matteo? I'm okay. His voice was rough, exhausted. It's handled. What does that mean? It means the people who thought they could threaten my family learned otherwise. It means you can come home now. It means... He paused. It means I kept my promise. I came back. Relief flooded through her so intensely it made her dizzy. When? I'm sending a car now. Pack up. I'll meet you at the tower. The drive back felt longer than the frantic escape. Adriana stared out the window as the city woke up, sun painting the buildings gold, and tried to reconcile the 2 versions of Matteo DeLuca in her head. The monster who'd killed 3 people and orchestrated whatever violence had happened last night. The man who'd kissed her like she was precious, who'd promised to come back, who'd looked at her with fear in his eyes because she mattered to him. When she reached the penthouse, Matteo was waiting. He'd showered, changed into clean clothes, but she could still see the exhaustion in the lines of his face, the healing split on his knuckles. Are you hurt? She asked. Nothing that won't heal. He moved toward her slowly, carefully, like she might bolt. I need to tell you something about last night. About what I did. I don't want to know. You should. You should know exactly what kind of man you're married to. I already know. Adriana closed the distance between them, her hand finding his. You're the kind of man who protects what's his, who keeps his promises, who came back when he said he would. She met his eyes. You're also the kind of man who kills people. I'm not naive enough to pretend otherwise, but right now, I'm just glad you're alive. Matteo stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, but I'm also terrified for you, and I think that matters more. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking, this man who never showed weakness, trembling against her like he'd been the one in danger. I thought I was going to lose you, he said into her hair. When I realized they knew about the penthouse, knew about you, I thought I'd already lost you. And it was the worst feeling I've ever had. Adriana pulled back enough to look at his face. Why? I'm just the girl you're bought to pay off a debt. Why would losing me matter? Because somewhere between you trying to run and you defending me to my uncle, you stopped being a transaction and became... He stopped, his jaw working. You became mine, really mine. Not because I own you, but because I can't imagine this life without you in it anymore. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. I don't love you, Adriana said, because she needed to be truthful. I don't even know if I like you most of the time, but I don't want you dead, and I don't want to be alone, and maybe that's enough to start with. It's more than I deserve, Matteo said quietly. Probably. But it's what you've got. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. And when he lifted her into his arms and carried her to the bedroom, Adriana didn't protest. She wrapped herself around him, feeling the solid reality of him, the proof that he'd survived. They fell into bed together, and for the first time, it wasn't about ownership or duty or fear. It was about two people who'd been alone for too long, finding something like comfort in the wreckage of their circumstances. Later, as dawn light filtered through the windows and Matteo slept beside her, Adriana stared at the ceiling and wondered when exactly she'd stopped planning her escape. When had this cage started feeling like home? When had the monster started looking like a man? She didn't have answers, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Everything had changed last night. The walls between them had crumbled, and what was left was messy and complicated and terrifying. But it was real. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The shift between them was subtle at first, like fault lines moving beneath the surface before an earthquake. Matteo still left early and returned late, but now he kissed her goodbye in the mornings, his mouth lingering against hers like he was reluctant to leave. Adriana still spent her days in the penthouse, but she no longer counted the hours until escape. Instead, she found herself waiting for the sound of his key in the lock, for the moment he'd walk through the door and look for her first thing. They didn't talk about what had changed, didn't examine it too closely, as if speaking it aloud might shatter the fragile thing growing between them. But it was there in the way Matteo reached for her hand at dinner, in the way Adriana curled against him at night, in the quiet conversations that stretched into the early hours when neither of them could sleep. 2 weeks after the attack on the warehouse, Matteo came home with a gift. Adriana was reading in the library when he found her, a small velvet box in his hand. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing it warily. "Open it." Inside was a necklace, delicate platinum chain, single diamond pendant. Simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious jewelry she'd seen other mob wives wear. "It's beautiful," she said carefully. "It has a tracker in it." Matteo's voice was matter-of-fact. "GPS, panic button, direct line to my security team. If anything happens, if you're ever in danger, you press the diamond twice and help comes." Adriana looked up at him, understanding dawning. "You're still worried about another attack?" "I'm always worried." He took the necklace from the box, moving behind her to fasten it around her neck. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, sending shivers down her spine. "After what happened, I can't take chances. Not with you." She touched the pendant, feeling its weight. "Is this really necessary?" "Yes." He came around to face her, his expression serious. "The people who attacked us are still out there. We hurt them, but we didn't eliminate the threat. Until we do, you need protection." "Who are they? You never told me." Matteo's jaw tightened. "The Russo family. Frank Russo, the man you met at dinner. He's been trying to expand his territory for months. The warehouse attack was his way of testing my defenses. When he realized he couldn't break me directly, he started looking for other vulnerabilities." "Me," Adriana said quietly. "You." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "Which is why you don't leave this building without me or a full security detail. Why you wear this necklace at all times. Why I'm a prisoner again. Why you're protected." The correction was sharp. "There's a difference." "Is there?" She pulled away from his touch, frustration rising. "I finally started to feel like I could breathe, Matteo. Like maybe this could be something close to a real life, and now you're putting me back in a cage. I'm keeping you alive. By making sure I never leave? Never see anyone? Never have a moment that isn't monitored and controlled?" She stood, pacing the library. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. That letting myself care about you would just give you another way to control me." Matteo's expression hardened. "You think that's what this is about? Control?" "Isn't it always with you?" "No." He moved toward her, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "If I wanted to control you, Adriana, I'd have broken you weeks ago. I'd have made you afraid to even think about defying me. But I didn't. I gave you freedom. I gave you choices. I gave you everything I could without putting you at risk. Except the one thing I actually want, to live like a normal person." "You're not a normal person anymore." The words were brutal in their honesty. You're married to the head of a crime family. You're a target. And normal people don't survive in my world. They get destroyed by it. Adriana felt tears burn her eyes, hating them, hating the weakness they represented. Then what's the point? If I'm going to spend the rest of my life locked in this tower, what's the point of any of this? Mateo's face softened slightly. He closed the distance between them, his hands settling on her shoulders. The point is that you're alive. The point is that we're building something here, something that matters. The point is that I would rather have you safe and angry at me than free and dead. That's not your choice to make. Yes, it is, because I'm the one who has to live with the consequences if something happens to you. I'm the one who'd have to identify your body, bury you, wake up every day knowing I failed to protect the one person who actually matters to me. His voice cracked slightly. So yes, I'm making this choice, and I'm not apologizing for it. The raw emotion in his words stopped her anger cold. She looked up at him, seeing the fear beneath the control, the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. I matter to you, she said softly. You know you do. Say it, actually say it. Mateo's throat worked. You matter to me, Adriana. More than I thought anyone could. More than is probably safe for either of us. You've become the thing I think about when I'm in meetings. The reason I come home. The only good thing in a life full of ugliness. He pulled her closer. So forgive me if I'm a little obsessive about keeping you breathing. Adriana felt something crack open in her chest. I hate that I understand. I hate that I'm starting to think the same way about you. Good. Then we can hate it together. She laughed despite herself, the sound watery. This is so messed up. Yes, it is, he kissed her forehead, but it's ours. The moment broke when Mateo's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. I have to go. Meeting with my uncle. About the Russos? Among other things. He hesitated. Come with me. Adriana blinked. What? To the meeting. I want you there. Why? Because I'm tired of keeping you separate from this part of my life. Because if you're going to be in danger anyway, you might as well understand why. And because... He stopped, searching for words. Because I want you to see what I'm actually fighting to protect. What this empire is beyond just violence and money. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Okay, Adriana heard herself say. I'll come. An hour later, they were back at the warehouse where she'd met Dante DeLuca. But this time, when they entered the office, it wasn't just Dante waiting. 6 other men sat around a conference table. Hardened faces, calculating eyes, the kind of men who'd seen and done terrible things. Mateo's inner circle. Gentlemen, Mateo said, his hand at the small of Adriana's back. You all know my wife. She'll be sitting in on this meeting. The reaction was immediate. Dante's face flushed with anger. Mateo, this is family business. She has no place. She's family now, which means she has every right to be here. Mateo's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Anyone have a problem with that? No one spoke, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Mateo pulled out a chair for Adriana at the head of the table, taking the seat beside her. The message was clear. She wasn't just his wife, she was his partner, his equal. The meeting that followed was brutal in its honesty. They discussed the Russo situation with clinical precision. Warehouses lost, shipments intercepted, men killed. Frank Russo was making a play for the entire Eastern District, using the warehouse attack as a declaration of war. We need to hit back, one of the men said. Show him we're not weak. Retaliation will only escalate things, another argued. We should negotiate, find a compromise. Compromise makes us look desperate, Dante cut in. We crush him, take out his key operations, make an example. And start a full-scale war? Mateo's voice was calm, controlled. That benefits no one except the police, who'd love an excuse to crack down on all of us. So what do you suggest? Dante's tone was challenging. That we do nothing? I suggest we be smart about this. Mateo leaned forward. Russo wants the Eastern District because it's profitable, but it's also complicated. Too many small businesses, too much legitimate commerce mixed with our operations. It's hard to control without significant resources. Which is why it's valuable, someone said. Which is also why it's a trap. Mateo pulled up a map on the screen behind him. The Western District, on the other hand, has been underutilized for years. 3 major ports, direct access to shipping lanes, minimal police presence. If we consolidated operations there instead, you want to give him the Eastern District? Dante's voice was incredulous. I want to make him think he's winning while we position ourselves better strategically. Let him waste resources trying to manage territory that's more trouble than it's worth. Meanwhile, we build something more sustainable, more profitable. And when he's overextended, Matteo's smile was cold. We take everything. The room fell silent as the men processed this. Adriana watched Matteo's face, seeing the strategist beneath the enforcer. This wasn't just about violence or revenge. It was chess played with human lives, territory, and power. And Matteo was thinking 5 moves ahead. It's risky, one of the men said finally. If it doesn't work, it will work, because Russo is predictable. He sees opportunity, he takes it. He won't look for the trap until he's already caught. Matteo's gaze swept the table. But I need everyone on board. This only works if we move as one. Slowly, reluctantly, the men nodded. Even Dante, though his expression remained sour. Fine, Dante said, but if this backfires, it's on you. Everything is on me. That's what being in charge means. After the meeting, Dante pulled Matteo aside. Adriana stood near the door watching as uncle and nephew spoke in low, tense voices. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw Dante gesture toward her, saw Matteo's jaw clench. When Matteo returned to her side, his face was carefully blank. What did he say? Adriana asked as they walked to the SUV. That bringing you to the meeting was a mistake, that it makes me look weak, controlled by emotion. Matteo opened the car door for her. That I'm repeating my father's mistakes. What mistakes? Matteo climbed in beside her, signaling the driver to go. For a long moment, he didn't answer, just stared out the window at the passing city. My father loved my mother, he said finally, completely, obsessively. It made him vulnerable. His enemies knew they could hurt him through her, so they did. His voice was flat, emotionless. When I was 15, someone put a bomb in her car. My father found out who ordered it and spent the next 6 months hunting down everyone involved. He killed 43 people, and when it was over, he was still just as broken as the day she died. Adriana's throat tightened. Matteo, my uncle thinks I'm making the same mistake, getting attached, letting my feelings compromise my judgment. He turned to look at her. And maybe he's right. Maybe bringing you into my world is the stupidest thing I've ever done. But I'm doing it anyway, because I'm tired of keeping the things I care about separate. Tired of pretending you're just a wife on paper when you're so much more than that. What am I to you? The question came out whisper soft. Matteo's hand found hers, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. You're the first person who's ever looked at me and seen past the monster, who's challenged me instead of just obeying, who makes me want to be better than what I was raised to be. He brought her hand to his mouth, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. You're everything, Adriana, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. The admission hung between them, raw and vulnerable. Before Adriana could respond, the SUV suddenly swerved, hard. What the? Matteo started. The rear window exploded in a shower of glass. Adriana screamed as Matteo threw himself over her, covering her body with his. More gunfire erupted, bullets punching through the armored panels like they were paper. Drive, Matteo shouted to the driver. Get us out of here! The SUV accelerated, tires squealing. Adriana could hear the security vehicles behind them returning fire, the sharp crack of weapons mixing with the roar of engines. They were in a residential neighborhood. People on the sidewalks dove for cover. A bullet took out a streetlight, sparks raining down. How many? Matteo demanded, pulling a gun from beneath his seat. 3 vehicles, the driver said, his voice remarkably steady. 2 sedans, 1 van, professional setup. Russo? Has to be. Matteo's face was carved from stone. He looked down at Adriana, still pinned beneath him. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak past the terror lodging in her throat. Good. Stay down. Don't move. He shifted, bringing his weapon up, and fired through the shattered rear window. The gunfire was deafening in the enclosed space. Adriana pressed her hands over her ears, squeezing her eyes shut. The chase lasted 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Their security team managed to take out 1 pursuing vehicle, sending it careening into a parked car. But the other 2 kept coming, relentless. They're trying to box us in, the driver said. Force us into the industrial district. Don't let them. Matteo fired again. Get to the highway. Lose them in traffic. The SUV took a hard right, nearly tipping. Adriana felt herself sliding across the seat despite the seatbelt, her head cracking against the window. Stars exploded across her vision. Then suddenly, one of the pursuing sedans pulled alongside them. Adriana saw the window rolling down, saw the barrel of an automatic rifle. "Down!" Matteo roared. The world exploded in noise and glass and blood. Adriana felt something hot spray across her face, heard Matteo curse. The SUV lurched violently to the left, and she realized their driver had been hit. Matteo dove for the front seat, grabbing the wheel even as the driver slumped sideways. He steered with one hand, still firing with the other, his movements precise despite the chaos. "Hold on!" he shouted. The SUV mounted the curb, sideswiped a delivery truck, and burst through a chain-link fence into an abandoned lot. Matteo slammed the brakes, throwing the vehicle into a skid that brought them to a shuddering stop behind a concrete barrier. For a moment there was only the sound of their ragged breathing and the tick of the cooling engine. Then Matteo was pulling her out of the SUV, his hand iron tight around her wrist. "Run," he said. They ran. Behind them, Adriana could hear car doors slamming, voices shouting. The pursuing vehicles had followed them into the lot. Matteo pulled her into a condemned building, through rooms thick with dust and decay. She could hear their footsteps echoing, could hear the men behind them spreading out, hunting. "Up," Matteo whispered, pointing to a rusted staircase. They climbed, the metal groaning beneath their weight. Second floor, third, fourth. Finally, Matteo pulled her into what looked like an old office, its windows overlooking the lot below. "Stay here," he said. "Don't make a sound." "Matteo, I mean it, Adriana. Stay." He moved to the doorway, his gun raised, his body blocking the entrance. Below, she could hear the men entering the building. 3, maybe 4 of them. Footsteps on concrete, the scrape of metal. Adriana pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The pendant at her throat felt heavy. The panic button, she should press it, call for help. But her hands were shaking too badly to reach for it. A shadow appeared in the stairwell. Matteo fired without hesitation. The shadow fell with a wet thud. More gunfire erupted from below. Matteo ducked back into the office as bullets tore through the doorframe. Dust and plaster rained down. "How many?" Adriana whispered. "At least 3 more." Matteo's eyes were cold, calculating. "They're going to rush us. When they do, you're going to get yourself killed. I'm going to keep you alive. There's a difference." Before she could argue, footsteps thundered up the stairs. Matteo stepped into the doorway and opened fire. The noise was catastrophic. Adriana saw 2 men fall, saw a third retreat, saw the fury on Matteo's face. Then she saw the grenade. It rolled across the floor, small and dark and terrifying. "Matteo!" she screamed. He saw it. His eyes went wide. And in that split second, Adriana understood what he was going to do. "Don't she started. Matteo grabbed her, threw her toward the window, and covered her body with his just as the grenade detonated. The explosion lifted them both off their feet. Glass shattered. The world turned white-hot and deafening. They crashed through the window together, tumbling into open air. For one terrible, weightless moment, Adriana felt like she was flying. Then they hit the fire escape 1 floor down, metal screeching, bolts tearing free from the wall. Matteo's arms stayed locked around her even as they rolled, even as he took the impact meant for her. They came to rest in a tangle of limbs and blood, and for a horrible moment Adriana thought he was dead. "Matteo," she sobbed, her hands on his face. "Matteo, please!" His eyes opened, blood trickled from his temple, and she could see pain etched in every line of his face. "Can you move?" he rasped. "I think so. You?" "Doesn't matter. We have to go." He pulled himself upright, dragging her with him. The fire escape groaned beneath their weight, listing dangerously to one side. Above them, she could hear voices, could hear someone yelling that the targets had gone through the window. Matteo half carried, half dragged her down the remaining floors. By the time they hit the ground, sirens were wailing in the distance. Their security team's remaining vehicles screeched into the lot, men pouring out with weapons drawn. Someone wrapped a blanket around Adriana's shoulders. Someone else was trying to look at Matteo's injuries, but he pushed them away, his eyes locked on her. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "I'm fine. You're the one bleeding. Are you hurt?" he repeated, his hands running over her arms, her ribs, checking for injuries. "No, I'm okay. I'm... Her voice broke. You almost died. You jumped through a window to save me. Of course I did. He pulled her against his chest, his arms crushing her close. Of course I did. In the distance, she could hear police radios, could see flashing lights approaching. Mateo's men were already moving, covering evidence, preparing to disappear before the authorities arrived. We need to go, one of them said. Now. Mateo nodded, but he didn't release Adriana. He kept her pressed against him as they were hustled into a waiting vehicle, as they sped away from the scene, as the adrenaline finally started to drain from her system. Only when they were safely back at the tower, in the penthouse, with its reinforced walls and security systems, did he finally let her go. They stood in the living room, both covered in dust and blood, staring at each other like survivors of a shipwreck finally reaching shore. This is my fault, Mateo said finally. I should never have brought you to that meeting. Should never have made you a visible target. Stop. Adriana crossed to him, her hands framing his face. Just stop. You didn't do this. Russo did. And you saved my life. Again. I almost got you killed. But you didn't. We're here. We're alive. She pressed her forehead to his. We're alive, Mateo. His arms came around her, trembling. This man who never showed weakness was shaking like a leaf. When I saw that grenade, he whispered, when I realized I might lose you, you didn't. I would have died to keep you safe, gladly, without hesitation. I know. She pulled back to look at him. I know. And that's why I need you to end this. Whatever it takes, whatever you have to do, end it. Because I can't watch you die for me. I can't. Something dark and final settled in Mateo's expression. Okay. Okay? Russo wanted a war. He's going to get one. But it ends on my terms. And when it's over, his jaw set. When it's over, he'll wish he'd never heard your name. The promise in his voice was absolute. And Adriana realized that in trying to hurt Mateo through her, Frank Russo had made a fatal mistake. He'd given Mateo a reason to stop playing chess and start playing for blood. The war came swiftly and without mercy. Within 48 hours of the ambush, 3 of Frank Russo's warehouses went up in flames. His lieutenant was found floating in the harbor with 2 bullets in his skull. 2 of his best enforcers disappeared completely, no bodies recovered, no trace left behind. The message was clear and brutal. Mateo De Luca was done playing defense. Adriana watched it unfold from the tower, safe behind reinforced walls, in a security detail that had tripled in size. Mateo came and went like a ghost, his face growing harder with each passing day. The warmth she'd begun to see in him buried beneath layers of ice and calculation. He didn't talk about what he was doing, didn't share the details of the violence he was orchestrating, but she saw it in the blood on his knuckles when he thought she wasn't looking, in the way he stared at nothing for long stretches, in the nightmares that woke him at 3 a.m, gasping and reaching for the gun he kept under his pillow. On the 4th night, Adriana found him standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the city he controlled through fear and strategy. You haven't slept in days, she said quietly. Can't afford to. Russo's getting desperate. Desperate men make mistakes, but they also get reckless. He took a drink. I need to stay ahead of him. You're going to collapse. I'll sleep when he's dead. The coldness in his voice made her shiver. This was the man the city feared, the one who'd killed 3 people over a succession dispute, the one who could order executions with the same ease most people ordered coffee. She crossed to him, her hand settling on his back. This world, Mateo. Don't shut me out this world, Mateo. Don't shut me out now. He turned to face her, and she saw the exhaustion etched deep in his features. Russo's losing ground. He thought he could survive a sustained assault, but he underestimated how many allies I have, how many people owe me favors, how much infrastructure I control. He set down his glass. In another week, maybe 2, he'll have nothing left. And when he's completely isolated, you'll kill him. Yes. No hesitation, no remorse, just cold fact. And then what? Another family takes his place? Another enemy comes after us? Maybe. Probably. Mateo's hand came up to cup her face. This life doesn't have happy endings, Adriana. Just temporary ceasefires between wars. I thought you understood that. I do. But I also understand that you're destroying yourself to protect me, and I don't know how to live with that. Something cracked in his expression. You think I'm doing this just for you? Aren't you? I'm doing this because he tried to take what's mine, because he showed weakness to everyone watching, because if I don't respond with overwhelming force, every two-bit criminal in this city will think they can challenge me. His voice dropped. But yes, part of it is for you, because when those bullets were flying and that grenade went off, the only thing I could think about was keeping you alive. And anyone who threatens that, his jaw clenched. They don't get to breathe the same air as you anymore. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it made her heart ache. Come to bed, she said softly, just for a few hours. Your men can handle things for one night. Adriana, please. I need you to rest. I need to know you're taking care of yourself. She took his hand. I need you alive, Matteo. Not just victorious. Alive. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Let her lead him to the bedroom. Let her help him out of his clothes. Let her pull him down onto the mattress beside her. She curled against his chest, feeling his heart beating strong and steady, and tried not to think about how easily that heartbeat could stop. How many people wanted him dead? How close they'd come to losing everything in that abandoned building. I'm afraid, she whispered into the darkness. His arms tightened around her. Of me? For you, for us, for what comes next. She tilted her head to look at him. I never thought I'd care this much about someone who bought me like property, but here we are, and I'm terrified of losing you. You won't lose me. You can't promise that. Watch me. His mouth found hers, the kiss deep and desperate and achingly tender. I've survived 32 years in this world, Adriana. Survived my father's brutality, my uncle's ambition, every enemy who thought they could take me down. I'm not dying now. Not when I finally have something worth living for. She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. They made love slowly, carefully, like they were memorizing each other. And when Matteo finally fell asleep with her wrapped in his arms, Adriana lay awake and prayed to forces she didn't believe in, that he was right. That love could be stronger than bullets. The next morning, everything changed again. Adriana woke to find Matteo already gone, a note on his pillow. Meeting with Dante. Back by noon. Don't worry. The don't worry made her worry more. She was drinking coffee and trying to focus on a book when Rosa appeared, her face pale. Mrs. De Luca, you need to turn on the news. Adriana's stomach dropped. What happened? Just turn it on. Channel 7. The television showed aerial footage of a building engulfed in flames. The chyron read, Major Fire in Financial District. The reporter's voice was grim. Authorities are calling this a possible act of arson. The building houses several major investment firms and is owned by De Luca Holdings. Fire crews are still battling the blaze, but early reports suggest significant casualties. We're waiting for an official statement from the company. Adriana's phone rang. Matteo's name flashed on the screen. Are you watching? His voice was tight, controlled fury barely leashed. Yes. How bad? Bad. Russo hit one of our legitimate businesses. Crossed a line he can't uncross. She heard him exhale sharply. I'm ending this today. Right now. But I need you to stay in the penthouse. Full lockdown. No one in or out except my personal security. Matteo, what are you going to do? What I should have done weeks ago. Don't. She stopped, knowing it was futile. Just be careful. Please. I love you. The words hit her like a physical blow. He'd never said them before. And the fact that he was saying them now, before walking into whatever hell he was about to unleash, made her throat close with fear. I love you too, she whispered. Come back to me. Always. The line went dead. The hours that followed were the longest of Adriana's life. She paced the penthouse like a caged animal, jumping at every sound, checking her phone every 30 seconds. The news showed more footage of the fire, reported casualties climbing to 8, speculated about gang warfare and organized crime. By late afternoon, the entire city knew the De Luca and Russo families were at war. Rosa brought her lunch that went uneaten, brought her tea that went cold, stayed close, offering silent support that Adriana was grateful for. He's done this before, Rosa said quietly. Gone to war. He always comes back. This feels different, because you love him now. That changes everything. It did. It had changed everything without her even realizing when it happened. Somewhere between the forced marriage and the grenade explosion, Between his restraint and his protection, she'd fallen for the monster who'd become a man. As sunset painted the city in shades of blood orange, Adriana's phone finally rang. But it wasn't Matteo. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. DeLuca. The voice was male, unfamiliar, cold. I have something that belongs to you. Her blood turned to ice. Who is this? A friend of Frank Russo. And if you want to see your husband alive again, you'll do exactly what I say. The world tilted. You're lying. Matteo wouldn't get caught? Wouldn't miscalculate. Your husband is very good, Mrs. DeLuca, but he's not invincible. And he made the mistake of walking into a meeting thinking he had the upper hand. A pause. He was wrong. I don't believe you. Put him on. There was a shuffling sound, then a voice that made her knees buckle. Adriana? Matteo's voice was rough, pained. Don't listen to them. Don't do what they... The sound of a blow, a grunt of pain, then the original voice returned. As you can hear, he's very much alive. For now. Whether he stays that way depends entirely on you. What do you want? There's a warehouse, Pier 17. You have 1 hour to get there. Come alone, or we put a bullet in his head. Come with security, and we put a bullet in his head. Tell anyone where you're going, and we put a bullet in his head. Are we clear? Yes. Her voice was shaking. Yes, we're clear. Good. 1 hour, Mrs. DeLuca. Don't be late. The line went dead. Adriana stood frozen, her mind racing. She should call Dante, call Matteo's security team, call someone who could actually help. But they'd been clear. Any deviation, and Matteo died. She looked at the pendant around her neck. The tracker. The panic button. If she pressed it, security would come immediately, would know her location, would follow her to the warehouse, and Matteo would die. Her hands were shaking as she removed the necklace and placed it on the table, grabbed her coat, walked to the elevator with her heart hammering against her ribs. The security guard stationed outside looked surprised to see her. Mrs. DeLuca, is everything... I need to go out. Personal matter. Ma'am, Mr. DeLuca left strict instructions, no one in or out. I'm not asking permission. She met his eyes, channeling every ounce of authority she'd learned from watching Matteo. I'm the lady of this house, and I'm telling you to let me through, now. The guard hesitated, clearly torn between his orders and her command. Please, she added, her voice softening. It's important. Finally, reluctantly, he stepped aside. Adriana took the elevator down to the parking garage, found the keys to one of the SUVs hanging on a hook near the security office. Her hands shook as she started the engine. She had 1 hour to get to Pier 17, and no idea if she was driving to save Matteo's life or end her own. The warehouse district at night was a graveyard of industrial decay. Empty buildings loomed like tombstones, their windows dark and vacant. Adriana's headlights cut through the darkness as she navigated the broken streets, following the GPS to Pier 17. When she arrived, the warehouse looked abandoned. No lights, no vehicles, no signs of life. But she knew better. Adriana parked and climbed out of the SUV, her legs unsteady. The night air was cold, carrying the smell of salt water and rust. I'm here, she called out. I came alone, like you said. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a side door opened, spilling yellow light into the darkness. A man appeared, silhouetted against the glow. Inside, hands where I can see them. Adriana walked forward on legs that felt like water, her hands raised. The man patted her down roughly, searching for weapons, finding nothing. Clean, he called over his shoulder. He shoved her through the door. The warehouse interior was vast and empty, except for a circle of harsh light in the center. And there, tied to a chair in the middle of that circle, was Matteo. Blood streaked his face from a cut above his eye. His shirt was torn, revealing bruises blooming across his ribs. But he was alive, conscious. And when he saw her, his expression morphed from relief to horror. No, he said hoarsely. Adriana, no. What did you do? I saved you. She started toward him, but rough hands grabbed her arms, holding her back. Actually, a voice said from the shadows, you condemned him. Frank Russo stepped into the light. He was smiling, but there was nothing warm in it, just cold satisfaction. Thank you for coming, Mrs. DeLuca. I knew you would. Love makes people so predictable. He circled Matteo's chair slowly. Your husband has been a thorn in my side for too long. I thought I could break him by attacking his business, his territory. But I was wrong. The only way to truly destroy Matteo De Luca is to take what he actually cares about. You have me, Adriana said, her voice steadier than she felt. Let him go. Russo laughed. Let him go? No, no. You misunderstand. I don't want to trade. I want him to watch you die. Want him to live with that failure for whatever time he has left, which, admittedly, won't be long. You kill her, and you're a dead man, Matteo said, his voice like gravel. My entire organization will hunt you. There won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. Your organization is already falling apart. Half your lieutenants are ready to jump ship. Your uncle is positioning himself to take over the moment you're gone. You've lost, Matteo. You just don't know it yet. Adriana's mind raced. She'd walked into a trap with no weapons, no backup, no plan. But she had one thing Russo didn't expect. She had nothing left to lose. You're wrong about something, she said, her voice clear and strong. Russo turned to her, amused. Oh? What's that? You think I'm weak because I'm not from your world. Think I'm just some helpless wife who'll beg for mercy. She met his eyes. But Matteo didn't choose me because I was weak. He chose me because I refused to break. Because when he caught me trying to escape, I didn't cry or plead. I told him to go to hell. How inspiring, and also irrelevant. Is it? Because here's what I know about men like you, Frank. You're not as smart as you think you are. You're not as powerful. You're just bullies who mistake cruelty for strength. She took a step forward, the men holding her tightening their grip. And bullies always underestimate the people they hurt. Adriana, stop, Matteo said urgently. Don't antagonize him. Why not? He's going to kill us anyway. Might as well die honest. She smiled at Russo, cold and fearless. You want to know what your real mistake was? It wasn't attacking Matteo's businesses or coming after me. It was thinking this would break him. But you don't understand love, do you, Frank? You think it's weakness, but it's the opposite. It's what makes people willing to die, willing to sacrifice everything. She locked eyes with Matteo, willing to make the hard choices. And then she did the only thing she could think of. She lunged, not at Russo, at the gun holstered at his lieutenant's hip. Her fingers closed around the grip just as chaos erupted. Someone shouted, hands grabbed at her, but she was already moving, spinning, raising the weapon. Time seemed to slow. She saw Russo reaching for his own gun, saw Matteo straining against his bonds, saw the shock on every face. And she made her choice. She aimed at Russo and pulled the trigger. The shot went wide. She'd never fired a gun before, had no idea how to compensate for the recoil. But it was enough. Russo dove for cover, his men scattered, and in that moment of confusion, Matteo moved. He threw his weight backward, tipping the chair, breaking the wooden frame against the concrete. His hands came free, still bound with zip ties but functional. He grabbed a piece of the broken chair, a jagged wooden leg, and drove it into the throat of the nearest guard. Blood sprayed. The man went down choking. Matteo ripped the gun from the dying man's hand and started firing. The warehouse exploded into violence. Adriana hit the ground, covering her head as bullets tore through the air above her. She heard screaming, heard the wet sound of bodies falling, heard Matteo's voice cutting through the chaos. Adriana, stay down! She stayed down, pressing herself flat against the cold concrete while the world tore itself apart around her. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, maybe an eternity. When the gunfire finally stopped, Adriana slowly raised her head. 4 bodies lay scattered across the warehouse floor, Russo's men. Matteo stood in the center of the carnage, blood on his hands, the gun still raised. And Frank Russo was on his knees, clutching his shoulder where one of Matteo's bullets had found its mark. Please, Russo gasped. Please, I have money, connections, whatever you want. Matteo walked toward him slowly, deliberately. What I want is for you to understand what happens when you threaten my family. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'll leave the city. You'll never see me again. You're right. I won't. Matteo raised the gun. Wait! Adriana's voice cut through the moment. She pushed herself upright, her whole body shaking. Wait! Matteo's eyes flicked to her. Adriana, don't kill him. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. What? Matteo's voice was barely above a whisper. Don't kill him, she repeated, moving closer. Her legs felt like they might give out, but she forced herself to stand, to face this. Not like this. Not because of me. He tried to kill you. He would have tortured you in front of me just to watch me break. He deserves to die. Maybe. Probably. But if you kill him now, you're doing it for revenge. And revenge just breeds more revenge. More enemies. More blood. She stopped in front of Mateo, her hand settling over his on the gun. You told me once that mercy creates loyalty. That it's what separates you from your father. So show mercy now. Not for his sake. For yours. Mateo stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You want me to let him live after what he did? I want you to be better than him. Better than this. Her voice cracked. I want us to find a way out of this cycle of violence. And it has to start somewhere, with someone. Why not here? Why not now? For a long, terrible moment, Mateo didn't move. His finger stayed on the trigger, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Then slowly he lowered the gun. Get out, he said to Russo. Get out of this city. If I ever see you again, if I even hear your name, I will finish this. Do you understand? Russo nodded frantically, blood streaming between his fingers. Yes. Yes, I understand. Go. Russo stumbled to his feet and ran, disappearing into the darkness beyond the warehouse. The moment he was gone, Mateo turned to Adriana. His hands came up to frame her face, and she saw them trembling. Are you insane? He said, his voice raw. You could have died. You should have stayed in the tower, should have pressed the panic button, should have done literally anything except walk into a trap. I did what I had to do to save you. By risking your own life? By proving that we're partners, that I'm not just someone you protect. I'm someone who fights beside you. She covered his hands with hers. You've been protecting me since the day we met, Mateo. It was my turn to protect you. You grabbed a gun. You've never fired a weapon in your life. I know. I missed. A slightly hysterical laugh bubbled up. I missed by like 3 feet, but it was enough. You're incredible, he said, the words somewhere between awe and terror. And completely reckless. And he pulled her against him, crushing her to his chest. The bravest person I've ever met. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling his heart racing against hers, and let herself finally shake apart. The adrenaline crashed, leaving her weak and trembling. I was so scared, she whispered. When they called, when they had you. I know. His hands moved over her back, her hair, as if reassuring himself she was real. But you came anyway. Walked into hell for me. Of course I did. I love you. His breath caught. Say it again. I love you, Mateo De Luca. I love you despite the violence and the danger and the insanity. I love you because of who you choose to be when it matters most. Because you showed mercy to your enemy when you could have chosen revenge. Only because you asked me to. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes searching her face. But you were right. You're always right. This cycle has to end somewhere. The sound of vehicles approaching made them both tense. But it was Mateo's security team finally arriving, pouring into the warehouse with weapons drawn. Dante was with them, his face a mask of fury. What the hell happened here? He demanded. Mateo kept Adriana close as he faced his uncle. Russo made a play. It failed. He's alive but banished. This war is over. Over? He's still breathing. That's not over. That's unfinished business. It's finished. I'm making it finished. Mateo's voice was steel. We've lost enough, done enough damage. The cycle stops here. You're making a mistake. Showing weakness? I'm showing strength. The strength to end something before it destroys us all. He met Dante's eyes. You taught me that power comes from fear, but I'm learning that real power, lasting power, comes from knowing when to stop, when to show mercy, when to build instead of destroy. Dante looked between Mateo and Adriana, something shifting in his expression. She's changed you. Yes, Mateo said simply. She has, for the better. For a moment, Adriana thought Dante would argue, would challenge, but instead the older man just shook his head. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. Or horrified. Maybe both. Good, Mateo replied. That means I'm doing something right. They returned to the tower as dawn broke over the city. Adriana's clothes were filthy, her body aching, her hands still shaking from the adrenaline crash. But she was alive. They both were. In the penthouse, Mateo ran her a bath, tended to the minor cuts and bruises she'd sustained, held her when the shaking got too bad to control. "No more secrets," he said as they lay in bed together, exhaustion finally pulling them under. "No more keeping you separate from my world. From now on, we face everything together." "Together," Adriana agreed, her fingers lacing with his. And for the first time since their forced marriage began, it felt like a promise they'd both chosen to make. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The city woke to news of Frank Russo's departure. Word spread through the underground networks like wildfire. He'd vanished overnight, his operations dissolved, his territory abandoned. Some said he'd fled to Europe, others claimed South America. No one knew for certain, and no one dared ask Matteo De Luca for confirmation. What mattered was the silence that followed, the absence of gunfire, the slow return to an uneasy peace. Adriana spent the first week after the warehouse recovering from trauma she hadn't realized she'd sustained. Nightmares woke her at 3 a.m, her body drenched in sweat, the phantom sound of gunfire still echoing in her ears. Each time, Matteo was there, pulling her against his chest, murmuring reassurances until her breathing steadied. "You don't have to be strong all the time," he told her one night, his fingers carding through her hair. "Not with me. Never with me."
"I keep seeing it," she whispered. "Keep seeing you tied to that chair. Keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd made a different choice." "But you didn't. You made the right choice, the brave choice. And we're here now, together. That's what matters." She wanted to believe him, tried to. But the fear lingered, a shadow that followed her through the penthouse, whispering that this peace was temporary, that violence would find them again.
It was Rosa who finally pulled her out of the spiral. "Mrs. De Luca," she said one morning, bringing breakfast to find Adriana staring blankly at a book she hadn't turned a page of in an hour. "May I speak freely?" "Of course." Rosa sat down across from her, folding her hands in her lap. "I've worked for this family for 20 years. I've seen wives come and go, seen what this life does to people who aren't built for it. Most of them break. Some run. A few become harder than the men they married, and that's worse than breaking." She met Adriana's eyes. "But you're different. You survived something that would have destroyed most people. And now you're letting it destroy you anyway, just more slowly." The words hit like a slap. "What am I supposed to do? Pretend it didn't happen?" "No. But you could choose to live instead of just survive. You could decide that after everything you went through, you deserve more than sitting in this tower waiting for the next crisis." Rosa's expression softened. Mr. Matteo is trying to build something different, a way forward that isn't just violence and fear. But he can't do it alone. He needs a partner, someone who reminds him what they're fighting for. Adriana looked down at her hands, seeing the faint bruises still yellowing on her wrists from where Russo's men had grabbed her. "I don't know how to be that person." "You already are. You just have to decide to keep being her." The conversation stayed with Adriana long after Rosa left. She thought about the woman who'd grabbed a gun despite never firing one, the woman who'd demanded Matteo show mercy when revenge would have been easier, the woman who'd walked into a trap to save the man she loved. That woman hadn't been weak, hadn't been helpless. That woman had been fierce. When Matteo came home that evening, he found Adriana in his office, sitting at his desk, reviewing documents about the De Luca Holdings' legitimate businesses. "What are you doing?" he asked, surprise clear in his voice. "Learning. You said we were partners now. That means I should understand all aspects of what you do, not just the criminal parts." She looked up at him. "I want to help. Really help. Not just be someone you protect." Matteo crossed to the desk, studying her face. "This isn't necessary, Adriana. I don't expect— I know you don't, but I do. I expect it of myself." She stood, moving around the desk to face him. "I've spent my whole life being powerless. My father made decisions for me. You made decisions for me. Even when I fought back, I was reacting to other people's choices. But not anymore. I'm choosing this. Choosing to be involved. Choosing to build something with you instead of just surviving alongside you." Something shifted in his expression, pride mixing with something deeper. "What did you have in mind?" "The fire at the investment building. 8 people died. Families lost their income. I want to set up a fund for them. Compensation, education assistance for the children, medical care for the injured." She held his gaze. I know the DeLuca family has blood on its hands. I'm not naive enough to think we can wash that away. But maybe we can start balancing the scales. Do something good with all this power and money. Matteo was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, genuine and warm. My father would have called that weakness, said helping victims makes you look guilty. What do you call it? The beginning of something better. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Set it up. Whatever you need, it's yours. Over the next month, Adriana threw herself into the work. She met with the families affected by the fire, listened to their stories, ensured they received not just money, but resources, job placement, counseling, real support that would last beyond a single check. She discovered she had a talent for organization, for seeing what people needed and making it happen. And slowly, the nightmares faded. Not gone, but manageable, replaced by purpose. Matteo watched her transformation with something like awe. You're incredible, he told her one night as they reviewed foundation paperwork together. You know that? I'm just doing what should have been done years ago. No, you're doing what no one else thought to do, what no one else had the courage to do. He set down his pen, turning to face her fully. You're changing this family, Adriana, changing what it means to be a DeLuca, and I'm so damn proud of you. The words made her throat tight. We're changing it together, are we? His hand found hers. Because sometimes I look at what I've built, this empire of fear and violence, and I wonder if it can actually change, or if I'm just fooling myself. It can change. You already proved that when you let Russo live, when you chose mercy over revenge. I made that choice because you asked me to, because I trust you more than I trust my own instincts. Then keep trusting me. Keep choosing the harder path. Keep being better than what you were raised to be. She squeezed his hand. We're not going to fix everything overnight, but we can fix it piece by piece, decision by decision. His answer was a kiss that tasted like promise and possibility, but the past had one more test waiting for them. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. Adriana was at the foundation office, a small suite of rooms Matteo had purchased for her work, when her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Adriana. The voice was familiar in the worst way. It's your father. Everything inside her went cold. Marcus Vale. The man who'd sold her to pay his debts, who'd chosen his own survival over her freedom. How did you get this number? I still have connections. People who owe me favors. He paused. I heard about what happened. The fire. The foundation you started. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. The endearment made her skin crawl. What do you want? Can't a father call his daughter? I've been worried about you, haven't seen you since the wedding. You haven't seen me because you sold me like cattle and didn't bother to check if I survived the transaction. Silence on the line. Then, that's not fair. I did what I had to do. You don't understand the pressure I was under. You're right. I don't understand how a father could do that to his child, and I don't want to. Her voice was ice. Goodbye, Marcus. Wait, please. I need to see you. There are things I need to explain, things you don't know about that night. There's nothing you could say that would change what you did. Just one meeting, one conversation. Please, Adriana. You're all I have left. She should have said no, should have hung up, but curiosity, or maybe the ghost of the daughter she used to be, made her hesitate. One meeting, public place, 1 hour, and then you never contact me again. Thank you, sweetheart. There's a coffee shop on 5th and Market tomorrow at 2? Fine. Don't be late. She hung up before he could say anything else, her hands shaking with anger and something that felt uncomfortably like grief. That night, she told Matteo about the call. He listened, his expression darkening with each word. You're not going, he said flatly when she finished. Yes, I am. Adriana? I need closure, Matteo. I need to look him in the eye and hear whatever pathetic excuse he's concocted, and then I need to walk away knowing I gave him a chance to be honest, and he wasted it. Then I'm coming with you. No. She took his hand. This is something I need to do alone, but you can have security nearby, watching, just not visible. Matteo looked like he wanted to argue, but finally, reluctantly, he nodded. Okay, but if anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Promise me. I promise. The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Marcus Vale would choose, Pretentious, overpriced, full of people too absorbed in their laptops to notice conversations happening around them. Adriana arrived early, chose a table near the back with clear sight lines to the exits, and waited. Her father arrived exactly on time. He looked older than she remembered, more worn. His expensive suit didn't quite hide the weight he'd lost, the hollowness in his cheeks. Adriana. He started to reach for her hand, but she pulled back. His face fell. You look beautiful. Marriage agrees with you. Cut the pleasantries. You have 1 hour. Use it wisely. He sat down, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and spent the first 10 minutes talking around the real issue, asking about her life, the foundation, whether she was happy. She answered in monosyllables, watching him squirm. Finally, he broke. I know you hate me. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand. Understand what? That you were scared? In debt? That doesn't excuse selling your daughter. I didn't have a choice. The words burst out of him, loud enough that nearby patrons glanced over. He lowered his voice. They were going to kill me, Adriana. Not just threaten, actually kill me. I saw what they did to others who couldn't pay. I couldn't end up like that. So you sacrificed me instead. I thought... He stopped, running a hand over his face. I thought DeLuca would be kind to you. That being married to him would be better than what would happen if I refused. I told myself I was protecting you. By giving me to a stranger? By not even asking if I wanted this? Would it have made a difference? If I'd asked, would you have agreed? The question hung between them, and Adriana realized with a sick twist that she didn't know the answer. If her father had explained the situation, told her it was marriage or his death, what would she have chosen? It would have made a difference because it would have been my choice, she said finally. Because I would have known what I was walking into instead of being blindsided. Because you would have treated me like a person instead of a bargaining chip. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know I destroyed our relationship, but I need you to know that I did love you. I do love you. I just loved my own life more. The honesty was brutal, and somehow it was what she needed to hear. Thank you for that, Adriana said quietly. For finally being honest. Can you forgive me? She thought about it, really thought about it, and realized that forgiveness wasn't a switch she could flip. It was a process, a choice she'd have to make over and over. I don't know, she said. Maybe someday, but not today. Not yet. That's more than I deserve. He reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope. I wanted to give you this. It's not much, but it's what's left of your mother's jewelry. I sold most of it to cover debts, but I kept a few pieces. The ones that meant the most to her. They should be yours. Adriana took the envelope, feeling the weight of it. Inside were a simple gold locket, a pair of pearl earrings, a delicate bracelet. Things she vaguely remembered her mother wearing before cancer took her when Adriana was 12. Thank you, she said, her voice thick. I should go. I can see you're uncomfortable. Marcus stood, hesitating. For what it's worth, I am proud of you. What you've built with the foundation, the woman you've become. Your mother would be proud too. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't invoke her to make yourself feel better. She would be ashamed of what you did, ashamed of what you became. The truth of it landed like a blow. Marcus flinched, nodded, and walked away without another word. Adriana sat alone with her mother's jewelry and her complicated grief and let herself cry for the father she'd lost and the childhood that had been stolen long before Matteo DeLuca entered her life. When she finally left the coffee shop, Matteo was waiting outside in the SUV. He didn't ask questions, just pulled her into his arms and let her break down against his chest. Did you get what you needed? He asked when she finally quieted. I got closure. That's enough. Good. Because you never have to see him again if you don't want to. She pulled back to look at him. You'd do that? Ban him from contacting me? In a heartbeat. Just say the word. Adriana thought about it, about the man who'd raised her and the man who'd betrayed her, about forgiveness and moving forward. No, she said finally. Let him call if he wants. I don't have to answer, but I won't close that door completely. Not yet. Matteo studied her face, then nodded. Whatever you need. Always. The months that followed brought a peace Adriana had never imagined possible. The foundation grew, helping dozens of families affected by the DeLuca Empire's darker dealings. Matteo gradually shifted more operations to legitimate business, using his connections to build something sustainable rather than just profitable. They still lived in the tower, still had security, still existed in a world where danger was always a possibility. But they also had dinners with Dante where they discussed strategy and family, had quiet mornings drinking coffee on the balcony, had nights where they talked about the future instead of just surviving the present. 6 months after the warehouse, Matteo came home with papers that made Adriana's breath catch. "What are these?" she asked, staring at the legal documents. "Ownership papers. For the foundation. I'm signing over full control to you, making it legally independent from DeLuca Holdings." He met her eyes. "You've built something amazing, Adriana. Something that's entirely yours. It shouldn't be tied to my name or my reputation. It should stand on its own." "Matteo, this is..." She couldn't find words. "This is everything. You're everything. This is just paperwork." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it, gratitude and love and the fierce joy of being truly seen by another person. When they broke apart, she had one question. Are we really going to make this work? This life we're building? We already are making it work every day, every choice. His hand came up to cup her cheek. "I can't promise you safety. Can't promise there won't be more threats, more violence, more complications. But I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life choosing you. Choosing us. Choosing to be better than what I was. That's all I need." A year after their forced marriage, Adriana stood in the foundation office, looking at a wall of photographs. Families they'd helped, children now in college, parents with new jobs, lives rebuilt from the ashes of tragedy. Rosa found her there, a soft smile on her face. "You've done something remarkable here, Mrs. DeLuca." "We've done something remarkable," Adriana corrected. "This was never just me." "Perhaps, but you were the catalyst. You saw possibility where others saw only destruction. You chose hope over bitterness. That's a rare gift." Adriana thought about the girl who'd run from the honeymoon suite, desperate for escape. About the woman who'd grabbed a gun to save her husband. About the person she'd become in the space between those two moments. "I didn't feel like a gift at the time. Felt like survival." "The best gifts often do." Rosa touched her shoulder gently. "Mr. Matteo is waiting downstairs. He said something about a surprise." Curiosity piqued, Adriana headed down to find Matteo standing beside the SUV, looking pleased with himself. "Get in," he said. "We're going somewhere." "Where?" "You'll see." They drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city proper, heading into the suburbs. Finally, they pulled up to a house. Not a mansion, not a fortress, just a beautiful home with a yard and trees and normalcy radiating from every brick. "What is this?" Adriana asked. "Our future? If you want it." Matteo opened her door, helping her out. "I know the tower is secure, but it's also a prison, and you've spent enough time in cages. I thought maybe we could build something different here, a place that's ours, not the DeLuca families, not the Empire's, just ours." Adriana walked toward the house, her heart in her throat. It was perfect. Large enough for a family, small enough to feel like home. Gardens waiting to be planted. Rooms waiting to be filled with life and laughter. "You bought this?" she said. "I made an offer, pending your approval. If you hate it, we'll find something else, but I thought..." He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "I thought maybe we could start thinking about a future that isn't just about surviving, about what we want to build together." Adriana turned to face him, seeing the vulnerability in his expression. This man who'd bought her as payment for a debt was now offering her a choice, a real choice. "I love it," she said. "I love you, and I love the future we're building. Even though it started with violence and coercion? Because it started there and became this. Because we took something ugly and made it beautiful. Because you became the man who offers choices instead of giving orders." She moved into his arms. "You asked me once what I was. Brave, stupid, or naive. I think I'm finally figuring out the answer." "What's that?" "I'm yours. Freely, completely. By choice." She smiled up at him. "And you're mine. Not because I bought you or trapped you, but because we chose each other. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Matteo kissed her there, in front of the house that represented everything they were building together, and Adriana felt something click into place. This was what freedom felt like. Not the absence of constraints, but the presence of choice. The power to decide who you wanted to be and who you wanted to love. 3 years later, Adriana stood in that same house, now filled with furniture and memories and the sound of a baby crying upstairs. She smiled, setting down her coffee to head toward the nursery. Matteo was already there, their daughter cradled in his arms, his voice soft as he murmured to her. He looked up when Adriana entered, his expression transforming into something incandescent. "She has your eyes," he said, "and your stubborn chin." Adriana moved to his side, running a finger over their daughter's tiny hand. "What are we going to tell her? When she's old enough to ask how we met?" Matteo considered this. The truth, that our beginning was complicated and painful, that we didn't choose each other at first, but we chose each other every day after. That love isn't always pretty or perfect, but it's worth fighting for. He looked at her. That her mother was the bravest person I ever met, and that she taught me what it means to be better. And her father was the strongest man I ever knew, strong enough to choose mercy, strong enough to change. Adriana leaned her head against his shoulder, strong enough to love me when I was fighting him every step of the way. "You made it easy, even when you were trying to kill me in my sleep." She laughed, the sound bright in the quiet nursery. "I only considered it twice, maybe 3 times. "I love you," Matteo said, the words still filled with wonder even after years of saying them. "I love you for choosing to stay, for choosing to build this with me, for making me want to be worthy of you. You already were worthy. You just needed someone to remind you." Their daughter made a small sound, settling into sleep. Matteo placed her gently in the crib, and they stood together, watching her breathe, marveling at the life they'd created from the ashes of who they used to be. Later, as they sat on the porch in the gathering dusk, Adriana thought about the journey that had brought them here. The fear and anger and desperation, the violence and trauma, and hard-won peace. The slow transformation of a transaction into a partnership into love, love into a family. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The choices you made? The life you gave up?" Matteo was quiet for a moment. "I regret the pain, the people hurt along the way, the darkness I brought into your life. But regret you? Regret us?" He shook his head. "Never. Not for a single second. Even though I grabbed a gun and almost shot your enemy's accountant instead of him? Especially because of that." His laugh was warm. "You grabbed a gun for me, Adriana. You walked into hell for me. You showed me mercy when I deserved none. How could I ever regret the person who taught me what love actually means?" She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "We've come a long way from that honeymoon suite." "We have. And we have so much further to go." "Together? Always together? No more running, no more hiding, just you and me building something worth fighting for." As the stars emerged overhead and the city lights glittered in the distance, Adriana realized that this was the ending she'd never dared to imagine on that wedding night when she'd tried to escape. Not because someone had rescued her or the circumstances had changed, but because she'd found the strength to transform the cage into a choice. And in choosing to stay, in choosing to fight, in choosing to love the monster until he became a man, she'd discovered something powerful. Freedom wasn't about escaping the circumstances that bound you. It was about deciding who you wanted to be within them. She'd been sold into marriage by a desperate father, claimed by a criminal who needed respectability, trapped in a tower of luxury and isolation. But she'd become so much more than that. She'd become a woman who grabbed guns despite the fear, who demanded mercy from monsters, who built foundations from wreckage, who chose love even when hate would have been easier. She'd become Adriana De Luca, not the bride who was bought, but the woman who refused to bow. And in the end, that made all the difference. Matteo's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. "What are you thinking about?" "How grateful I am that you caught me when I ran. I'll always catch you, even when you're not running, especially when you're not running." "Good, because I'm not running anymore. This is home. You're home." "You're everything," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "My wife, my partner, the reason I choose to be better every single day. And you're mine, my husband, my equal, the man I chose to love." They sat in comfortable silence as night settled around them, Two people forged by fire who decided to build something beautiful from the ashes. The empire still existed. The danger still lurked. The past still cast its shadows. But they faced it together, side by side. Partners in every sense of the word. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And that choice, that simple, powerful, daily choice to stay, to fight, to love, transformed everything. The war was over. The battle was won. Not through violence or vengeance, but through the quiet revolution of two people deciding that mercy was stronger than revenge, that trust was braver than fear, that love was worth any price. In the house that represented their future, with their daughter sleeping peacefully upstairs and the foundation helping dozens more families each month, Adriana De Luca looked at her husband and smiled. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. Because it was real. It was chosen. It was theirs. And she wouldn't change a single thing.